president must follow the law. And the Supreme Court had said that that was constitutional. So remember, we have 3 branches of government: the legislative, which is the Supreme Court, the executive, and the judicial. Oops, what was I thinking? Judicial is the Supreme Court, legislative is Congress, and the president is the executive. Sorry about that. So we've got 3 branches of government. They're all supposed to work together. So there was no way that the Americans could take over this land, right? No. So basically, in the middle of winter, you're not yawning.
No.
Don't yawn. Okay, in the middle of winter, these Native Americans were taken from their house, or excuse me, in the summer, the Native Americans were taken from their house and they were brought to Georgia. They were put in a camp there. They lost the Supreme Court ruling, and so Andrew Jackson himself, who had been saved by the Cherokee Indians several years before, just 15 years before Anna dropped her book, they were marched in the fall, the late summer and the fall, all the way from Georgia to Oklahoma. So let's look, while Anna's down, let's look right here, Georgia to Oklahoma, a long way to travel, an extremely long way to travel. And they did not have buses or cars or carts or anything. They literally had to walk, and since they had been driven from their homes in North Carolina and forced to go to Georgia in the summertime, most of them did not have shoes, they did not have winter clothing, they did not have coats, they did not have blankets, and they had very little food, and yet they were still forced to walk in the winter, in the snow, past from Georgia all the way to Oklahoma. And then after all of that, you would think, oh my goodness, nothing worse could happen. But yes, worse happened. There was a hospital in Tennessee who had been treating smallpox victims. Smallpox victims are covered with little pox, and many of them died.
And so they felt bad for them and gave them blankets that the people with the smallpox used, so many of the Indians died.
And many of the Indians then died from getting the smallpox from the blankets that were donated. It was awful, and it was a choice of our country. It was a choice of Andrew Jackson. And so we need to remember that many times, even though we love our country, and God did bless us with this country, we make mistakes. And just because someone's president does not mean that they always do the right thing. So we need to remember that. And so for the Cherokee Trail of Tears, we need to remember the Lumbee and the Cherokees. We need to remember Andrew Jackson. Henry Clay fought for them not to be removed. We need to remember Daniel Webster. And we need to remember, most of all, Samuel Worcester, who fought for them, who was a missionary for them, who lived with them, and who wanted to be with them. And finally, we need to remember one person who we're going to learn about later, which is Sam Houston. Sam Houston, do you guys, you know a city named after Sam Houston?
I forget. It was like
Houston, Texas. Houston, Texas. And so he was very instrumental in trying to help the Cherokee and the Lumbee Indians as well. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next week.